Alright guys, so there's a new term in the bodybuilding and fitness industry, more so in the forums and on the bodybuilding websites like RX Muscle, Muscular Development. And this term is called Palumbo Ism. Now I first heard of this term through a Louis Marco video, where he showed some pictures of some guys that he believed was suffering from this quote unquote Palumbo Ism. So if you don't know, Palumbo Ism is a term given to bodybuilders whose midsections remain big as they get older, remain big and misshapen, and their limbs and their extremities start to shrink. So their arms get small, but their gut, they just maintain that large gut, and they just start to look weird and just unnatural. And this phenomena began, or it was first noticed in the bodybuilder that is Dave Palumbo. If you don't know who Dave Palumbo is, he's the editor-in-chief of RX Muscle. I kind of feel bad for him that this term was developed to describe these bodybuilders after him, because I'm kind of a fan of Dave Palumbo. He's in a lot of ways he's kind of deceptive, and he has some deceptive marketing strategies and some deceptive products that he's offering. But I am a fan of Dave Palumbo because he keeps it real. He talks about steroids openly. He talks about issues in the sport of bodybuilding openly. He talks about the politics of bodybuilding openly, and he's not like a lot of these other bodybuilding news sources that kind of don't talk about what goes on behind the scenes. So I am a fan of Dave Palumbo in that respect. So I do feel a little bit apologetic and a little bit of sympathy towards him, that this term was kind of coined after him. So another thing that I wanted to point out is this phenomena seems to be mostly prevalent as bodybuilders get older, one, and two, it's in bodybuilders that competed in about the 280 to 300 range, the big guys, the heavyweights, the really big IFBB pros. So it first started with Dave Palumbo, and he was pretty big. I think he competed around 280, in the upper 280s. He was a big dude. He never turned pro. I believe he was just a top-level NPC competitor. But he was a really big bodybuilder, and he was known for being big. And as time went on, it just looked like his limbs were shrinking, and his gut was just staying huge and weird looking. And then there's another bodybuilder that came along by the name of Greg Kovacs, and this guy was a fucking freak. I believe he was 400 to 500 pounds in the off season. He was real tall though. He was just a massive bodybuilder. I believe he competed on stage at well over 300 pounds. He was just a huge guy, and as time went on and he got a little bit older, in his later years of competing, he developed this Palumbo Ism. His limbs shrunk, which used to be massive. He used to have some massive arms, and his gut just got grotesque looking and just disgusting looking. And there's been some other bodybuilders that show these signs of Palumbo Ism developing, but they're not really big names. And I think right now we can look at a few bodybuilders that are competing now, that are starting to develop this Palumbo Ism. If you look at them closely and compare them to pictures of bodybuilders that already developed it. First bodybuilder I would name would be Branch Warren. Branch Warren has always been blocky. He's always had a blocky gut, and he's never had a trim waist. But if you look at Branch Warren, as the years progress, his arms seem to look smaller and smaller in comparison to the size of his torso and his midsection. So I wouldn't be surprised if in 5 years, when he's nearing the end of his career, we start to see some pretty significant Palumbo Ism happening with him. I would be fairly comfortable with predicting that. I've always thought he had some fairly small arms compared to his midsection, and especially compared to his legs. But I would keep an eye on him for showing signs of Palumbo Ism. Another guy that already is kind of developing into this Palumbo Ism is Jay Cutler. And again, Jay Cutler's a big guy. He's always been a really heavy bodybuilder. And he's always kind of had a blocky physique. And he's never really had a really trim midsection. And now that he's in his later years of competing, you're starting to see his arms shrink. You've seen in videos where Jay Cutler says his arms are only 21 inches. Recently, like this Olympia, his arms were only 21 inches. I believe Jay Cutler's arms were 24 inches at one point in his career. So 21 inches, I don't think that's that big for a Mr. Olympia top 6 competitor and a Mr. Olympia winner. 21-inch arms, I mean, obviously he's shredded and he's at the peak of conditioning at 21-inch arms. But I've got 18-inch arms, And although I probably have a lot more body fat than he had at 21 inches, I mean, a 3-inch difference in arm size between me and a Mr. Olympia. I mean, you can obviously tell there's some shrinkage going on there. Another guy is Greene. I've always noticed a little bit of something odd going on with his midsection, especially in the off season. You can see that his midsection is very round, and it definitely has that distension, that HGH look to it. And I think Greene is going to be one of those guys that kind of shrinks down in his arms, and you can definitely see his midsection stay the same. Another guy, here's a big name that you guys all know, Ronnie Coleman. If you look at some pictures of Ronnie Coleman, there's a posing thing that he did after he retired, like well into his retirement, and his gut just stayed huge. And you all have seen the pictures. You all have seen his Twitter and his Facebook and his Instagram pictures of his recent what his physique looks like recently. His arms have definitely shrunk significantly, and you guys can tell even when he's wearing a shirt, you can see his gut sticking out. He's definitely got a serious case of this Palumbo Ism. Now the question is, what causes this Palumbo Ism in these bodybuilders? And I would have to say that in my opinion, based on the brief knowledge that I have on steroids and the little bit of knowledge that I have on human growth hormone, is that I believe it's because in their gut, all their internal organs are in that area. And when you take human growth hormone, it's not just your muscles that grow. So all their internal organs are growing, and they're all bigger than normal. So that gut is staying big. And the reason the gut is distended is because it's got those bigger organs in them. That's what pushes the guts out. So I don't think the guts shrink back to normal size. But as you get older, and as you get older and your testosterone decreases and your ability to maintain and retain muscle drops, your muscle is going to go away faster than your organs are going to shrink, if they shrink at all. So I don't think the organs shrink, from my knowledge. So the organs are going to stay the same, and the muscle building effects of the HGH are slowly going to wear off. So all those extremities, like the arms and the legs, are going to shrink, while that midsection stays big because of the size of the organs has been increased. So those are my thoughts on Palumbo Ism, guys. Let me know in the comment section who you think is going to be the next victim of Palumbo Ism. Do you think it's going to be Branch Warren? Do you think it's going to be Jay Cutler? Or do you think it's going to be Greene? Let me know.